What's your emergency?
Got off the ice and broke my leg.
Okay, let me get you through to medical. Stay on the line. You're in medical. What is the address for your emergency?
Silkworth, industrial trees, and my leg is broken.
Okay, can you tell me the mile marker one more time? Are you alone?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna get help right out to you, okay?
Okay.
Is that what saved her?
This video is a long time coming. I thought whenever I pushed that last video out that I would be pretty quick about sitting down and trying to talk about what actually happened that day. And quite honestly, it's been kind of hard to talk about. And also, you know, of course, I've had to deal with having surgery and the recovery process and everything else that's gone along with that. So I am about a month post-op at this point and doing well. I'll just kind of start from the beginning, what happened that day. And so I left the camp probably about 5:30 that morning. Was pretty excited about getting to Etna. It was day 11, and I was going to be taking a 0 before I made that last final push into Saya Valley, where I would be connecting all my footsteps and beginning Oregon. So I had heard that there was a snowfield that was difficult, but I had talked to one of my friends that was a southbounder, and he was like, yeah, it's no big deal, you can walk on top of the cornice, and so I just imagined it would be an easy way to find my way up there. What I found was contrary to that. When I started reaching the snow, it's no big deal. Didn't even have to use micro spikes at first. It was just patches. And the further I got on that north facing slope, the more snow that I was encountering. So I put on my micro spikes and started going over some of the bigger snow patches that were in the trail. And I don't know if it was because I was so early in the year, I really didn't see like an alternate way described in Far Out, the app that I use to navigate. And so I was just kind of following what footsteps I could see. There was a couple people in front of me, and the footsteps looked like maybe they were a day old or so. When I encountered the slope that I ended up getting hurt on, I could see two sets of prints going up the slope and kind of angling up. So I was following them and didn't notice anything to get around this big snowfield. Of course, I couldn't see completely the angle, the snow conditions, what it was like. It was pretty early in the morning. But I got on the snowfield, and at one point I did slide maybe like 10 feet, and I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do here? It was really slow and controlled, and I went feet first into some trees, and I was using my trekking poles, kind of like an ice axe. I didn't have an ice axe with me, but like I said, I was wearing my micro spikes. And that time, whenever I slid down, my pole was left in the snow, the upper pole, and so I had no choice to go back up there and get it. And so I was just more diligent about kicking in my steps with the micro spikes, and got up and got my pole, and I thought, okay, well, I just keep going. And looking back now, I mean, you go through the what ifs, or woulda, shoulda, coulda, things I could have done different. I mean, I've just, from that moment that this all happened, I was running those things through my brain. But anyway, I decided to keep going. I could see, like I said, 2 sets of tracks going kind of at an angle up the snowfield, and it kind of looked like it was heading towards like this big gap in the cornice. And I thought, okay, well, that kind of looks like where these footsteps are going, so if they did it, I mean, I should be able to do this. Part of it was still concealed or shadowed by the trees, and so the crust, although it's slicker snow, it didn't feel too bad. But the closer that I got to where this gap was in the cornice, the more sun that was shining on the snow, and it was getting slicker. There was kind of a ridge just prior to this gap, maybe where snow had blown, and I really couldn't see what was past it or over it, so I was getting closer, and the angle was getting steeper. I had kind of contemplated going back at one point, but it was further to go back than to go forward, and I thought my best option was just trying to get up on top of the cornice. Everything above me to try to get to the cornice was much too steep. So whenever I did get to this little ridge in the snow and looked over, I could see there was also a kind of a break in the snow that I interpreted was just unstable, kind of like an avalanche area. So if I'd kept going kind of straight past this break in the snow cornice, I would have been on top of that, and I just didn't think that was safe. Once I stepped across the ridge in the snow, I could see clearly where this break in the cornice was, and I immediately had this sinking feeling in my gut that I was in trouble. The cornice, I guess that was probably where that ridge was, is where the majority of the sun hits that. It was kind of like in a bowl, kind of went around like that. And I guess on the other side of that little ridge, the snow had melted away more. So the way up to the cornice where it had broke, or there was a gap, was literally straight up. And that was just not an option anymore. Going forward and trying to stay parallel with the cornice on my current trajectory was not an option, because I would have ended up in that area where the break in the snow looked like there could be an avalanche. And at this point, I was probably, probably 50, 70 feet above the tree line, and I thought my only option at this point was to try to make my way down into the trees. It felt like this is going to be my safest option. And I had a knee replacement on my right knee. I'm sure if you follow the channel, you kind of heard about this. So my left leg was my strongest. And so I'm standing on the snow, like I said, I felt just a sense of dread. Being my only option was to go down, I was going to have some sort of kick step into the snow, and at this point I was probably on a 75-80 degree slope, and it was very scary. But I just tried to keep my composure. I kept my hiking poles sunk down in the snow, and I decided, since my left leg was the strongest, I would pick my right foot up and make like a little kick or a step into the snow, so that I could just continue down towards the trees. Now, the trees were slightly buried in the snow, and if you know anything about the area, the trees, when they have a snow load against them, they kind of get like an angle to them, because the trees, as they're younger, are pushed down by all this snow. And they also create tree wells. Like, a lot of the snow will drift around the snow, and there'll be big holes. So at this point, I was technically on trail. Like, if there was no snow, I would kind of be on as close as possible to what the actual trail where it would be. I kicked with my right heel into the snow, and I didn't get quite enough angle that I wanted to. It was kind of very sloped. And the second time that I picked up my right foot, I was gone. I had had my upper pole buried into the snow, but I didn't manage to hold on to it. I didn't have the strap around my wrist or anything. And I went down that slope feet first. It's no way to stop myself. And I've had some people ask me, would you have been able to stop yourself if you'd had an ice axe? Or, I really don't know. I don't think so. It happened so fast that I honestly don't think that I could have been helped by that. The second that my left foot hit that tree, my femur dislocated. It spun me around, and I went backwards down into the trees. And when I came to a stop, I was very close to upside down. I was kind of at an angle. And I had stopped in kind of one of the tree wells. My legs were across a little branch that was slightly out of the snow. And of course, I still had my backpack on, and I'm laying there, and my other trekking pole was still in my hand, in my strong hand, and it was underneath me. And there were two other small branches kind of just suspending me there. Had I gone any further, I probably wouldn't be here to talk about this. And just 8 feet behind me were some boulders about this big, just a mass of them. And when I came to a stop and I realized what had happened, I knew this was not something I was going to get out of easily or on my own. So I'm very thankful that I had my Garmin Inreach Mini with me that day. You look back on things that happen and you're like, wow, if I had not done this, what would have happened? And this stretch was pretty long that I was on, and that night, whenever I was in my tent, I was checking my phone and checking my Garmin, and I had tried to conserve battery on my Garmin. I would turn it off on sections of trail that were like really seemingly easy, not gonna get hurt type areas and stuff, but for some reason that night I looked at it again and it was like maybe 10% of my battery life. So I had very little left in my battery bank, and so I charged my Garmin up to 50%, and the same for my phone. I got it up to 50%. I figured, you know, that's plenty. I am only 5.6 miles away from the trailhead. That should be good, and I'm glad I did, because, you know, you never know what could have happened if I hadn't had that. I was in a really remote area, and the cell phone service was touch and go. I was laying there, and I of course was in a great deal of pain. I looked at my leg in front of me and could see the head of my femur. It was a closed situation, so it wasn't through the skin, but I could see the outline of it, and my knee was bent. My foot was in an unnatural position, and I was shaking just because of the pain, and this whole situation was, you know, a little shocky. I had enough presence of mind to immediately grab my Garmin, which I kept pinned on my strap, on my shoulder strap on my backpack, and I couldn't see it because I was laying upside down. It was kind of pushing my pack back a little bit, and I just felt around until I found the SOS and took the cover off and hit it, and I was like, man, I hope this thing works. And I could hear it working, and so I kind of knew that maybe the message went out, but I also wasn't sure. I mean, I couldn't see it. It was hanging way back, and I was absolutely afraid to detach it from my backpack because I was afraid I would lose it. Like I said, I was suspended in these trees, and so I kept my fanny pack whenever I would do something that was that seemed like, hey, if I tripped and fell here or something like that, I always took my phone and stuck it into my fanny pack and zipped it up, and I'm so glad I did that when I was getting ready to traverse that snowfield. So I grabbed my phone out, and I, of course, took a picture of my leg so that I could see a little bit better. I didn't have my glasses, so I could see kind of what was going on with it, and see if I could maybe see, is my leg broken, because as you can imagine, it was quite painful. And I looked at the picture, and I didn't see any bones sticking out. I kind of felt around and assessed. The pain was not anything I've ever felt or imagined. Every little move I made was excruciating. So I had my phone on airplane mode, and I took it off airplane mode just to see if I had service. And I am so thankful that I did, because this ordeal lasted for hours. I'm very fortunate that I was very close to a trailhead, which made the rescue a little faster, but I think I was there for approximately 4 hours before I could be lifted out. I immediately called 911, and as you heard in the video, there was a lot of pain in my voice. I was trying to control myself, get out as much of the pertinent information as I could, just in case I lost cell phone service. And so I knew that someone knew I was there. And so I got all the pertinent information out, my name, phone number, what mile marker I was at on the PCT, and what my injuries were, what I thought they were. I knew that if they didn't hear me clearly, they would be able to rewind the recording and get all that information. Fortunately, they were able to get most of it pretty quickly and transferred me to CAL FIRE, where I spent pretty much the rest of those hours with a dispatcher, and she was able to keep me in touch and tell me, you know, what the update was, where people were, how the rescue party was progressing, and the pain would come in waves so bad that I just screamed out. And at one point, you know, I was trying to kind of keep traction with my leg with one hand, and I was holding a branch with the other, kind of trying to hold myself steady, and I had laid my phone on my chest. And during one of those times when the pain was just so bad, and I just kind of screamed out, and my back arched, the phone fell behind me and hit the rocks. And it was, psychologically, it was really hard to know that had just happened, because the person that was kind of like my lifeline and let me know what was going on and stuff I was afraid I'd just broken my phone and that we were disconnected, or, you know, at the very least, there's no way she could have heard me. And so I was quite upset, and I was probably crying a little bit. And through all that, I heard her voice saying, Sarah, I'm here, I'm still here. And it was nice to hear her voice again. So we just kind of communicated that way. You know, I had to talk a little louder, and so I could hear her and she could hear me. And it was generally around this time that I heard the helicopter off in the distance. And as it got closer, man, that was just like the best sound ever. To know that help was on the way, and it was getting close. I was going to get out of this. You know, I say I am happy to be alive, and I can, you know, try not to be overly dramatic. It's just so true. If I had not had my Garmin, or if I had not had a phone, I don't know that anybody would have ever found me. It had been a long time. They would have just had to stumble on me. I was pretty far down in those trees and not easily seen. I had my mat, my Z-Lite pad that was on top of my backpack that I use for brakes and stuff. And at one point in all this, I guess I was going into shock and shivering, and plus I was laying in this tree well with the snow against me, and the 911 dispatcher was like, Sarah, are you cold? And I was like, no, I'm not cold, but it just shows you that I was cold, a little shocky. So I had taken that out. It took a while because I couldn't see what I was doing, but I was able to get it out and put it between me and the snow, and it did help. But when I heard the helicopter coming and they got overhead, now mind you, they had my coordinates, but they couldn't see me. And the propeller wash was moving the trees, so I took the yellow pad and started waving it above my head to hopefully they would see a glimpse of something, and that way they could figure out where I was. And I have been in touch with everybody involved with the rescue, and it was kind of part of this process of being able to thank them and to be able to talk to them about it. So I talked to the helicopter crew, and I talked to the hoist operator. He said they had my coordinates, they knew I was there, but they couldn't see me, and they were going to different angles, and they finally got over to the slope. And whenever I talked to the hoist operator, he said the way I figured out where you were was I saw where you had fell on this slope and saw this, the skid marks going into the trees. Whenever they got around there and I could see them, they could see me, and they sounded their siren on the helicopter, and I knew they had seen me. I was pretty happy about that. And then they flew away. I knew that there were certain parts of this that I would need the ground crew for, and of course the helicopter played a part. So I told the dispatcher, hey, I know they saw me, and she said, okay, well, your ground crew has got in at the trailhead, and they're headed your way. And they got there probably, I don't know, hour and a half or so after that. So the helicopter crew had coordinated with the Fire Siskiyou Unit, and given them it's called a screamer seat to get me rigged up in. So it was pretty quiet for a little while, and I'm just so thankful for the dispatcher that talked to me and had to listen to me cry and listen to me scream due to the pain. And I just don't even know what I would have done without her reassurance. I think I would have had to try to self-rescue out of there, and then I think about, wow, what if I would have done that and had to try to free myself from the trees, and then ended up falling on my head, or got so far down through there, and it just was bad news all the way around. So I'm just thankful that I had that opportunity to have somebody giving me updates, reassuring me that help was on the way. That was amazing. So a little while longer after the helicopter had flown out, you could tell the way they were flying in pattern that they were looking for the best way to come in. The snow fields were really big, so the only option was for them to come off the cornice to rappel down to get me. And when the crew arrived, I could hear them yelling to me, and I would yell back, and finally they were able to locate me, and then they were a little ways down from me, and then they made their way up the cornice, and I really wish I would have had my phone. Of course, I didn't feel like filming or videoing at all, but there was a picture burned in my mind. CAL FIRE wears those yellow shirts, and above me, you know, at that point, I don't know how far, 100, 120 feet above me, the cornice, I see like 7 little heads with these yellow shirts kind of peering down over this cornice, and it was the best thing I had seen all day. So they got to work and rappelled down to me, and kind of assessed the situation. They had some splinting stuff, but it really, I guess they were a hasty team and didn't have a lot of proper splinting materials, but we made it work with what we had. Like I said, just every little movement that I made was just excruciating. And kind of hanging upside down, it made it even more difficult because all my weight was on my my upper body, and we had to get the screamer seat, get me in that, strapped in it. So it was probably took, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes just to get me in that where I was secured. Once I was in that, the CHP helicopter returned, lowered down the cable, and got me hooked in. When they got so far down, the ice and the snow from the prop wash was just like hitting me in the face, so I, of course, had my eyes closed, and I could hear the CAL FIRE rescuer, Captain Jason Gunn. He said, okay, he says, I'm going to have to push you out away from these trees. And so they started lifting me up, and I felt them push me a couple times away from the trees, and they started hoisting me up into the helicopter. I'm afraid of heights, but let me tell you, that was the best feeling, just knowing I was being taken out of there. And I also was, you know, I've had numerous people ask me, what was it like being lifted up? And I was at the point where, like, I knew if I fell or somehow wasn't secure enough that I fell, I probably wouldn't make it. And I was okay with that. This was a long ordeal. But as it was, I was safely hoisted up, and as I got closer and closer to the helicopter, I began spinning, and that's just from the prop wash. And I just had my eyes closed, and I could tell every time that I would get in the direction of the tail rudder, it was just a different sound, different rhythm. And I just kept my eyes shut, and then pretty soon I felt something touching my shoulder, and I opened my eyes just briefly, and it was the hoist operator putting his foot against me to stop me from spinning, and he got me situated where he could move the boom and get me inside the helicopter. So I went in butt first, and I was kind of like on the edge. And as you can imagine, my leg was deranged, and I was trying to hold it with my left hand. And once he kind of pulled me into the door of the helicopter, my legs were outside, and he took his leg and stretched out and used his leg to kind of stabilize or hold my leg up. And that way I was able to let go and grab hold of a handle that was right there. He put his arm around me to kind of try to, I guess, help hold me inside. But the moment he did that, I was very emotional because I knew I was completely safe. And I guess he sensed that I was sobbing, Of course, it's so loud you can't hear anybody say anything, and he just hugged me and patted my shoulder, and then I knew I was okay. I kind of kept my eyes open for a little bit. We had to get back to the Etna Summit Trailhead, and so we had a little bit of a flight, and for part of it I did open my eyes, and I was able to see the mountains and how rugged it was and stuff, and but we landed at the Summit Trailhead, and they had a ground ambulance there to take me to the hospital, Fairchild in Wairika. That's about a 40-minute ride. So at this point, I had no pain medication, and the ambulance crew was a EMT only. You have to be a paramedic to administer pain medication. So they brought the stretcher to the helicopter and kind of helped get me loaded up and stuff, and I was able to talk for just a few minutes with the helicopter crew, specifically the hoist operator, and he was amazing, and it was great to meet them and talk to him just for a few minutes before I was loaded up. And he had just got off the PCT. He's a section hiker also, had just got off the PCT that morning. So I got loaded up, and we started the 45 minute ride to Wairika for to the hospital. A Mount Shasta paramedic met us probably like 20 minutes before we got to the hospital and gave me some fentanyl drugs to help me with the pain, and it didn't even touch it. But at that point, we got to the hospital, and of course there was time for them to assess my injuries and stuff, and I did get some proper medication to help me with the pain. So it was determined that nothing was broken. Went in for x-rays. Nothing was broken. Just my femur had dislocated, and so we had to do a closed reduction procedure to get my leg back in the position it should be. So they put me to sleep under anesthesia and realigned my leg. They of course wanted to keep me in the hospital for a couple days, and I had some amazing trail angels that aligned things to try to, when I was released from the hospital, they were going to have a place for me to stay, help me get to the airport, help me get home, and everything. But with Garmin Inreach, you have a next of kin. So my sister, of course, is my next of kin, and she was contacted, and she ended up flying out to California to help me get home. This injury was quite extensive, and what it ended up being, the extent of my injuries were, I, of course, had torn the capsule that my knee was in with the dislocation, tore meniscus, my ACL, PCL, and MCL were all torn. Like I said, I had surgery about a month ago to repair all that. Of course, they had to use grafts to make some new ligaments in my knee. This is a very long and slow process. The surgeon said that it would be about a 9-month recovery. So 1 down, 8 to go. And so I've been asked so many times, like, do you think you'll go back out? Do you think you're going to finish? Are you ever going to hike again? And of course, whenever I visited with the surgeon, that was one of the first things I asked, like, am I going to be able to hike again? Because this is my passion. And he said, at first when we were discussing the surgical avenues, which were many because of the extent of the injury. We talked about repairing one specific ligament, waiting a few months, and then doing a knee replacement, which would have been 2 surgeries and probably a year's long recovery process. So when I initially posed that question to him, and we had decided, or I decided, I just wanted to go ahead with the reconstruction of the ligaments. I didn't want to go through another knee replacement right now. He was questionable about it. He said, well, it's not impossible, but you may not be able to hike as far at your pace. He was kind of questionable about it, but didn't think it was totally impossible. So I had the surgery and had a 2-week follow-up with him, and that was the first time I got to speak to him about the surgery. I guess I talked to him right after surgery, and you don't remember hardly anything. You're still groggy from the anesthesia and stuff. But anyway, I asked him, do you think that I'll be able to hike long distances again? And his demeanor was very different. His answer was very different. He was very confident. And he said, with everything that we did in there, he said, yes, yeah, you'll be able to hike again. So that is my goal. In a little less than a year, I plan on returning to the Pacific Crest Trail. On my way there, I want to stop and thank the first responders that helped me, that rescued me. And so I'll spend a few days doing that and giving kind of some closure to all this. My plan is to go southbound and walk those 2.5 miles to the location where I was rescued and connect my footsteps. And then continue to Side Valley. There are some issues with snow historically in that area. I plan on being there a little later in the year, so maybe that will help some. But I've also reached out to a couple trail angels and people that know that area, and there are options to get around these big snowfields that could still be lingering. Because quite honestly, the thought of ever getting on another snowfield right now, it really freaks me out. So I will be avoiding those as much as possible. People say, oh, you shouldn't hike by yourself, or you shouldn't go back, and quite honestly, I can't do that. Number one, finding somebody to hike with is just sometimes unrealistic, and if you wait on somebody, you may never get to go again. But I'll be as safe as possible when I return, and I'm hoping that next year will be my year to finish the Pacific Crest Trail all the way to Canada. I'll have less than 1,000 miles left to finish this journey, and I'm hoping to be completely restored. My body will be strong again, and I'll be able to finish this. And still, like I may have mentioned before, I'm interested in a Triple Crown, and that means that after this trail, I would do the Continental Divide Trail. So far, things are going well, and I'm hitting all the markers and maybe exceeding in a few places. The protocol that this surgeon has me on is one for athletes, and I plan on making the best of the opportunities I've had with having the best surgeon in our area and one of the best sports physical therapy places that you could ever choose. And I want to get better, be stronger, and finish this. So, all right, guys, I know this has probably been long, but I kind of wanted to touch all the bases on this whole incident. I'm sorry it took me so long to get out, but as you can imagine, this was pretty traumatic. And I'm just happy to be alive, happy to be able to sit here and talk about this, and maybe somebody else will learn something from it. You know, my woulda, shoulda, couldas. I think that after falling that first time, just those 10 feet, I should have turned around and found a better way. But I didn't. And that decision led to this situation. So maybe it'll help me to realize I need to slow down and make a little bit better decisions if it's possible. But anyway, all right. Thank you for following. And I hope we'll be able to be back on the PCT again soon in 2026.